Well, hello everyone. Just trying to see what's going on. Let's Hey, Shavy. Hi, Brandy. How are you? Just request. What's up, Just? Ooh, girl, you at the spa, child. I know that's right. Get some spa time in for me. I'm gonna need you not to be looking at me like that and that with that face. I had a wardrobe malfunction. Hold up, let me turn my volume up. There we go. Mm-hmm. How you doing, Daddy Rich?
Hey, Daddy Rich. Thank you for joining us. I was just on his show Thursday. We had a great talk, what men want,
Oh,
with a great
why I
panel
wasn't
of,
on there? I want to be on there.
because it was just about the men. They got an opportunity to talk. It was no sis talk. It was all men talking. It was great. It was great. It was great.
How you doing, Justin? I ain't seen you in so long. Well, thank you, Daddy Rich, for joining us. We're just waiting. Brandy's there. She just didn't request. Let me. Um, there we go. I sent her another request.
Okay.
Hello. Is it Ernell's closet?
Aaronell's Closet. That's my girl, Erica in ATL, and that is her wonderful boutique where I've got spent way too much money
Oh,
over the last
that's
year.
a
So you
good thing.
guys have to go on Aaronell's Closet for some great fashion, jewelry, accessories. It's great. So thank you, Erica, for joining. Hey, Brandy.
Hey, boo.
Well,
Uh-oh,
thank you,
look.
Daddy Rich. I would love to be on the agenda. Whatever you want me to be on, I'll be on the agenda.
I
I'm
tried
well
to catch it,
versed.
Anissa. I saw you on there. I was like, oh, no, I can't get... Yeah, I saw you guys. You guys were doing a great job.
Thank you.
Well,
On what was that, last Thursday or
hmm Did you
today?
see my
Oh,
text?
thank
I had
you.
a crisis, so I couldn't stay in there, but I was like, oh, my gosh, this is so good.
Oh, on Wednesday. On
On
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Yes.
Wednesday.
Yes, for doing too much. Yes, we had a good
Ernell's
time.
Is it Ernell, AK?
It's Aaronell's Closet.
Ernell's. Just drop your tag so
Hey,
everybody.
Yeah.
Bobby, my
Yeah.
brother. Hey, Oliver.
Hello. Is it Dr. Brandy, Mrs. Brandy, Miss Brandy?
Just
How do you?
Brandy. I like just Brandy. I'm just me, right, Anissa? Just plain old
She
me.
is. She
Thank you for
is.
joining us. It is such an honor to have a psychotherapist on here to give us a little bit more insight than the regular sis talk. Even though I think I'm a YouTube lawyer and a YouTube therapist,
I'm a
counselor.
profiler. I'm CSI. I'm all of that. Like all of that. All
Yes,
of that.
All of
I
that and then
follow
some.
all
yes.
of that.
So
Yes.
I need my water, but
I got
Layla's
my
not here
water.
to be my server, because she normally fixes me up before my sis talk sessions or whatever. But you see, Maya then locked her door.
So I do have water, but water's not in this in my girls' night out glass. I'll just a little
What's in your
apple
girls' night
rum.
out glass?
This is apple flavored rum from the Dominican.
Oh, you know
But
what
I
I
do
like is
have
that
water.
coconut. I like the coconut rum.
I do have some coconut too. I do have some coconut too. Look at us already finding ourselves on what we like.
I'm gonna have to swing by your house. I'm gonna have to swing by your house.
Absolutely. 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 Yes, Daddy Rich, you got me busy. You got me busy too. Yes, I've been a little busy just this week. Hopefully you guys will also join me tomorrow for Sultry Sundays. It's a jazz show on Zoom that I host once a month. So hopefully you guys are following me at the AK Free. So you can get those links and things like that, as
Put
well
your
as twice a month.
put your tag on there, FJ, before we start.
Uh, at the AK Free.
Type it in the comment section so everybody can join
Okay.
the
All
page.
right.
And oh, what's up, Mr. Francis? The honorable husband of the year.
That's right.
And hello, Dre. He has stepped into the room.
Hey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm
So,
ready whenever
ladies,
you guys are. The AK Free.
comment section so everybody can
Okay.
join the page. So, ladies, since I have been trying to find my best self before the psychotherapist, Brandy, comes on and tell me how I need to elevate my life, okay? I have been on this keto diet. I've been starving since April.
Oh no, I thought keto was supposed to like beat the cat's meow. I thought you weren't supposed to be hungry on it.
Well, I'm not going to say I'm hungry, but my cravings are still there for like juice and cake and cookies, what I can't eat. But
They got
I got it,
keto stuff like that. They got
and
all
it's
that good keto.
nasty.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
the only thing that was good was these fat bombs from Slim Fads and these keto bombs, but they're supposed to be peanut butter cups.
How's the keto fast working? I don't know much
Oh,
about
it's
it.
working great for me. I already lost 11 pounds because I told Freeman Jones, AK Free, that I was looking too fluffy on camera.
I
Child,
had some COVID pounds. I had to, man.
the
Oh.
struggle is real.
Mhm.
The
Well,
struggle is real.
ladies, thank you all for being on yet another Sis Talk session with AK Free, my lovely, lovely boo. I've been knowing her for years. And, and she's so knowledgeable. And
Yes.
she brought on her good friend, who's a psychotherapist, Brandy Wimbish.
Bish.
Y'all get that right? Because at first I was saying your name all wrong. So I'm country and my pronunciation is off. So I have to practice that. I was practicing that while I was putting my lashes on. Wimbish.
Right, because
I'm
we
at the
want to default to what, Brandy? What do we usually want to say?
Yeah.
Wimbush.
Right, right. So
Right.
you have to
I'm
practice it,
quite
right?
sure
Yeah.
that, 'cause I was typing that on the flyer and everything. So, well, ladies, today we're talking about getting into our best selves. I know a lot of ladies struggle with becoming their best self. Actually finding out what version of themselves should show up in every era of their lives, right? So I know I have transitioned many different times as a woman once I turned 18. And I know my saving grace was experience, looking at other people in their lives and analyzing how they got in those positions and making sure I did the opposite. And education was also a saving grace for myself. And being around people who were older than me. I have a lot of my friends that are older than me and wiser than I am. So that has also been my saving grace. And I have a great mother who instilled a lot of values and morals and ethics in me that was also great contributing to me or helping me find my best self. So I'm gonna turn this over to AK Free so she can really get us into the conversation as to how women are to explore and live their fulfilled lives as their best selves.
Right. So
This
thank
is a great
you.
topic.
And again, thank you, Brandy, for coming on and joining us. And it's so funny. I just have to say this to the audience. So both of these ladies I absolutely love dearly. And I met them both at the same place, at Dr. Henry A. Wise Jr. High School. Catherine and I opened up the transition program together, Brandy, and then she left and went to Alexandria, and Brandy came a few years after you left, and that's where I met and fell in love with her. So this is absolutely hysterical, but also like touching for me. So I think when we talked about, doing this show, finding your best self, I think we first want to really talk about how do you define what that is, right? Like is there a definition, or are there several definitions? Because now that I'm in year 50, I realize that my best self, I think, has changed or evolved, or depending on how I've added roles to my life. My best self, that definition may have changed, or I had to add to it. So, Brandy, I think I first want us to talk about how do we define our best self? Because are we talking physical? Are we talking mental, social, emotional? You know, or do we define it at all and just kind of look at it as a journey, right? That just doesn't end.
I would say the latter part, which is to look at it as a journey. And one of the things I can say, and I love that you were saying, there are these different ages and stages in our lives. A lot of my clients come into me, and I can have clients as young as, 14, 15 years of age, all the way up to 60, 70 years of age. And what I've personally discovered and professional is your best self comes into place when you start to really learn to, one, celebrate who you are, and learn to celebrate other people as well. I think one of the challenges that we have as a people, as a human race, and it's particularly as a Black race, and forgive me, I just got these braces in, so I'm talking a little weird, which is not usually how
Let's
I'm
not get
talking.
started on braces because Miss Catherine Lewis has an obsession with teeth. That's a whole nother show.
Oh, we can do the teeth thing. But you're right. It's in talking to a lot of women and men as well. One of the things I think that we learn very young is to be in constant competition with other people, including
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. And I don't really think that we get a lot of celebrate yourself and celebrate other people. And so what starts to happen is we spend so much time trying to make ourselves perfect that we lose out on so much of who we are and getting to our authentic selves. So our
Mm-hmm.
best self is with us the moment we're born. It's just unfortunate it gets lost. And, one, the messages we receive from our families, even if we have the greatest families on earth, we receive messages from them.
We
The
do.
Mm-hmm.
messages we receive in school, the messages we receive from society, the messages we receive from the media. And so all of those things start to play into who we are and how we identify ourselves and how we show up in our relationships. And the moment we start to realize that, that's when we discover our best authentic self. Because in that moment, that's when we can start to say, okay, I'm good enough now. And I want to say, I think it was Brene Brown. I want to say it was her. I'm almost positive it was her. But it's a quote I love, and it's perfection is the perfect lie.
Oh my
Perfection
God, yeah.
is the perfect lie. And so
Yes.
often, and I know this about you, Anissa, so I'm pretty sure it's the same for you, Catherine. The three women on this this live are overachievers. And that's a very stressful, painful place to be when you're overachieving and you're not really celebrating all of the things that you've done and you've accomplished. And you get to this space in life where you feel like, oh man, I've accomplished all these things, yet I still feel like something's missing. And the moment you figure out that something's missing, that's when you get to your best self, because then you do the work.
I think I struggle with, it's so funny, and I just put that in the chat because that's deep right there. That's a whole word right there. Perfection is the first lie. Because both of you know me, and you're right, Brian, you've never even met Catherine, but we're all kind of, we got to get it right. It has to be, like, even though we also recognize our flaws, I think sometimes we lose ourselves because I go, I know I'm not perfect and I make mistakes and I have flaws, but then I still struggle with making mistakes and making flaws. And am I good enough? Or, whatever that self-doubt may be, as confident as I think I am, I still go, you know, you still question, right? And it's the balance between, how do you make sure you're doing well because you want to do your best, but accepting that even though you did your best, everybody's not going to be okay with that. You said, when we kind of just own our authentic selves, I think for me, sometimes I go, well, if I own my authentic self, who am I losing in the process? But at the same time, I know I may lose some people in the process once I become my authentic self, or like it's always that juxtaposition of, yes, owning who I am and the sum of all of my parts. But what is the trade-off to that, right? Am I losing someone? Am I like, it is all of those kinds of, I think, things that I know I struggle with in terms of finding my best self. And can I ever rest? Like, can I ever just sit down and go, today I want to be my best self. Today I want no makeup on. I want my droopy boobs to be okay with whomever or not. Like I saw today, the beach will get the body I give it. I may decide to do keto. Like, I want to get to a state where it's not that I don't care, but I don't internalize and I must be whatever. You know what I mean? I don't know, Catherine, do you ever struggle with that at all?
Of course. I know one thing about me is I'm a perfectionist. Brandy was right. and,
Sure.
and being an overachiever, I've always been that girl, from the playground all the way up until now, that strives to be an overachiever. But what I struggle with is kind of like what Freeman Jones was talking about. I struggle a lot with making sure that everything is done perfectly to my perfect, right? And a lot of times, and I'm very structured, I try to be very organized, but I have these internal flaws that bother me to the core. Like, I really think that being late is genetic, okay? And it's something that I have been struggling with like all my life. I don't care if it's a job, I don't care if it's a wedding, I don't care if it's a girls' night or what have you. But outside of that, I'm this perfectionist that want to be on time. I really, I really do. But I have these certain flaws that's internal that I would like to fix. But I know we can't all be perfect. I have an unfiltered mouth sometimes too. We all have these things about ourselves, whether it's a body image or whether it's a materialistic thing or whether it's a goal you want to achieve. I just really think sometimes we really need to stop being so hard on ourselves and really understand put in the work on those internal flaws that we may have or what we deem as a flaw. And some things are not always flaws.
That's true. That's
And
true.
we may think like, oh, I think I'm fat, or I may need to lose weight, or I need, my skin needs to be better. Sometimes some things may not ever get to the thing that you want it to be. So I think women in general, we tend to internalize a lot of things and make a lot of things bigger than what they actually are. And I think a lot of that will mitigate itself when we get to a point of self-love.
Sure.
I
There's
know.
a question in the chat, I think is a good question. Do women tend to put too much pressure on themselves in regards to perfection when it comes to their appearance?
Yes. Well, I know this woman do. I can be honest about that.
Yeah, I think so. Here's what happens, and we kind of talked about this before. What's always a theme, and Brandy, once I put this out there, I want you to kind of help us. How do we kind of dismember this? I think as a woman that and it's not that men don't have expectations, they do, but particularly with body image, I know for me, it was a lot of mixed messages. It was be attractive so you can find a husband. I mean, to the point, how to cross my legs, how to bat my lashes, how to serve, how to be sexy without being whorish, and like all of these things, right? Like just so you can find a husband. And then it was, but be beautiful for you and just do it for you and, all that kind of stuff. And then society says, well, this is what all the men want because that's what the video, because like you all 80s, 90s, every image, and I'm talking about women of color. I'm not even going to talk about the Caucasian women. I'm like, I don't have the small waist with the big butt and big boobs. You get in, you know, right? And so it's all of these kinds of things. And then I talk to men and they go, all that lashes and all them nails and stuff that you do. We're not doing locker room talk about, did you see her nails? It was her. Did you see those lashes that week? That's not what locker room talk is. But all of these things, and then there's a way we need to show up at work. There's a way I can't show up to, you know, the dance recital this way. And I don't think men, I really just honestly, not that men don't have their own appearance issues. I just think that women are just expected to always be attractive, like all the time. And I'm like, no, I gotta wrap my hair. You're gonna see a kerchief on this when we go to bed. Like, it's not gonna be, I don't wake up like this. Like, I woke up like this. I don't define that because I don't wake up and maybe what you expect. So how do we dismantle that so we are not putting that kind of constant pressure on ourselves, Brandy?
I think it goes back to dismantling it with yourself. It goes back to that very premise. How painful is it to put that kind of pressure on yourself? Are you okay with being yourself when you're by yourself? That's the first question, right? I think one of the things, Catherine, you said so well, you know, my desire is to be on time, but I have a hard time with that. That's still perfectionism because there's a level of pain that comes with that. And when we start to subscribe to what other people want for us and we're dressing up for other people, that's the challenge. It's not the problem. The problem's not dressing up for me. If I like to look good and get dressed and smell good, that's certainly something I like. You know me, Anissa. You know, Catherine's over there on the teeth. I'm all about the skin and all these other things. You have to learn how to step back and say, okay, what messages have I received? And what is my definition of beauty for me? Because then we also have to look at the little brown people that we're raising and understand what messages are we sending to them, right? We send a lot of messages to our kids, and the kids receive these messages that they have to do this, they have to do that, they have to do this. And why can't you just be beautiful when you're your natural beauty? But why isn't it okay if you decide to put weave in your hair, if you decide to put lashes on? I have heard people come and say, you know, well, she got her butt done and it's not real. But if it makes that lady feel good,
That's
why
true.
is that a problem for us? Right? So we're dying to be beautiful. We're dying to fit in. But why aren't we dying to love ourselves first? Why aren't we dying to be authentic Black women? Right? And again, it goes back
if I
to
love myself with my weave, then that's not your issue. That is my issue. Because to your point, you know, if I decide to get this lifted or something, you know, if I'm doing it for me, then that's what's most important, as opposed to, well, I'm doing this because I want my friends to like me more, or I want to catch a boyfriend or a husband or a girlfriend, if that's what you know, because I am very inclusive.
Sure, you are. And can I say, Anissa, you're exactly right. The other piece is, you're right, men are not having that locker room talk, but let's be clear. We are visual people. So let's talk about how many of those slayed people actually last beyond 1, 2, 3 dates. Because here's the other thing that's attractive. It's extremely attractive when a woman can be herself and like herself all day, every day. I'm not saying be nasty, but if I can roll out of bed, and my husband's on here, I just seen him jump in here. Hey, boo.
Hey, husband.
He knows this about me.
Hey, Harry.
You better like the cellulite. You better like all that. Now, honey, I'm not going to be sloppy with it, but I love me enough to know that you better get with the program too. You know what I'm saying? And when
So
a
there's a
woman
great
gets to that
question
place, go ahead.
And that's a question somebody mentioned.
BG,
Yeah, from KC.
BG from KC. Hey, BG.
Free shows. I think it's what is it? Soul Free Sundays.
Free Sultry Sunday. Yep, he's my co-host. He'll be on there tomorrow.
Yeah. So, and here's something, since I have a psychotherapist in the room, here's something I would like to
I'm just Brandy.
about that question.
So yes, are you gonna share his question?
I'm getting all the money's worth with this question that he posed right now. So, which is a great question. He asks, where does the pressure come from to be pretty? Okay, and I know everybody have their own different story, but Brandy, I'm from the South. I'm
Mm-hmm.
Louisiana, New Orleans girl, right?
Mm-hmm.
Family is from, Southern Louisiana. And there has always been, since slavery, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
within my ancestry,
Mm-hmm.
within my family, there has always been this pretty woman or pretty girl, or you have to have your hair done with curls. You had to have a relaxer at the age when your hair starts to look too kinky, or you had to wear dresses for Easter and dresses when we go to company houses. You had to look a certain way with the ruffled socks, and everything was over the top with my family. And they still are. Majority of the women were hairdressers, so we already know the pressures come from our parents. And I'm gonna just say that first, because a lot of times the pressures are within our families, and we have this reputation and this look and appearance, because in New Orleans we go by last names, and that's our families, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're representing your family when you walk down the street, or when you graduate or walk across the stage, or whatever school you go to. It's a prestigious Catholic high school that you go to. And
Mm-hmm.
skin color plays a huge part within the African American community, where I come from, because the darker you are, the less pretty you are, unless you have nice hair, right? And when I say
Mm-hmm.
nice hair, I mean long flowing, thick, beautiful hair, right? So the more European your hair looks, the more accepted and the more beautiful you are. So it has even been a time where I didn't leave my youngest daughter with my mom, because I didn't want her to put any chemicals in her hair. I know she would bring her to the hairdresser, because my daughter's hair is natural, but I know she would bring my daughter to the hairdresser behind my back and put a relaxer in her head, because she always talk about, oh, you need to just straighten that hair and make it, straighten it and make it pretty, put some curls in that. And that's just not something, that standard that I'm willing to put my kids through anymore, because I want to unlearn that whole thing about being beautiful. And Beyonce talked about it in one of her songs, Pretty, I forgot the name.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty.
Unpretty.
Brown skin girl.
Yes, no, it was a one song on her solo album, and she was talking about pretty. I'm gonna remember the name, but she talked about that. Her mom would tell her, straighten your teeth, fix your back, look
Mm-hmm.
pretty.
Pretty.
You don't have to worry about school. Make sure you're beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So I say all that to say it's a lot of pressures with little girls starting from birth when you're
And
young.
it's not just even in the African American community, which has been more European and Americanized. Because if you trace back to whatever your tribe is, like whatever ancestry.com says your tribe is, there's always been something about beauty, right? And every culture that exists, I don't care if they're in the huts of the most remote parts of the world or in a metropolis, there is a definition of beauty for women, right? So it could be what you're adorned with, what's on your head, your skin color. Like there are some places where the darker you are, the more beautiful. Like it is something about us as human beings that we are very visual creatures, like you said, Brandy. And then when you mix the cultures and then it's the religion, then it's what's been passed down from slavery, or what's been, like, it is all of these mixed bowl of nuts. And you go, to Bryce's point, who's putting that pressure on? Well, all of it. And Rudy just said, well, is it come from society? Is it coming? It's coming
All of
from
it.
everywhere. It's coming from religion. It is coming from society. It is coming from what our parents pour into us, because they only pour into us what they know. I'm only doing, what I know, and trying to, like you, Catherine, raise my daughter very differently. And I have to say, this generation, like my daughter, she's on the phone video chat with her bonnet on, and I'm like, you talking to a boy with your bonnet? She's like, yeah. If he wants all those cute Instagram pictures, it doesn't start that way. He has to be able to talk to me in my bonnet. And I was so floored, because I wouldn't go to the mailbox with rollers in my hair. Right? I was so impressed with her, and I was like, I was so impressed with that. I was so impressed. She's like, yeah, I don't. I don't just appear this way.
Yeah,
So if he can't talk to me with my bonnet on, which in our generation is an absolute positive no. And so I think it's again, it's this dismantling, which I think in 2021, and having forums like this is so helpful because we are dismantling all of that. And let's not
and I
also,
like to call it, AK Free, I like to call it dismantling the indirect ignorance that we learned from our parents. We
right.
learned a lot of
Hmm.
indirect ignorance just because we were raised a certain way and our mamas made us do things a certain way,
That's
especially
true.
down south with our southern traditions and making sure you take care of your husband or making sure you take care of your man and making sure you never cuss in front of a man and all these things that, making sure you whip your kids and make sure that you serve your man first. My mama used to serve my stepdaddy every single time. We couldn't eat our food until my stepdaddy had the big piece of chicken first. Okay. So you have to, I think that's really teaching, and that she taught me those things. And make sure when you have a man that you serve him, but don't keep up something that you cannot keep up, right?
I know that's
But
right.
all of those things are sometimes damaging when it is incorrect. And I think that a lot of girls think that that's how you're supposed to be. My brother never had to touch dishes, right? I was the girl, the young lady in the house. I had to do those things, but I never took out the trash. So, so putting those roles and those things like that, those categorical like mishaps, you're putting that on your children. I made
Mm-hmm.
sure as a mother that I would not do that to my daughters, right? So I think sometimes we need to undo the the
Is it
things.
undo or is it balance? Because like you, the South moved to the North, even though I'm from New York, and moved to the Midwest because Brandy is from
I'm from
the
Colorado and
Midwest.
got my whole story about this stuff.
And I think for me, I have learned to sift through because I was ready to say with serve, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of it I'm okay with. I think it's not having a count. So I have a mother. My mother had me, and my parents were 19 when they got married and had me. And so my mother was part of that generation of, yes, I want you to find a husband, but at the same time, I want you to be your own woman. You could take out your own trash. But if there's a man laying up in your house, he needs it. So I had like this like both sides, right?
Yeah.
It was like, and for me, the struggle was like, well, how do I mix the two? Because I don't mind serving my man. Like, I'm like not trying to undo that. However, it is but I expect to be served too. And it may not be in the same way. And so I don't know. Is it unlearn? Is it undo, Brandy? I don't know. Is it a mixture of the two?
I think it's an acknowledgement of the two and then decide
Mm-hmm.
what's best for you. Like, right? You have to dig in deep and say, okay, do I have a problem with these messages at all, first and foremost? And if I do, why? Right? Because, like, in my mind, and what I believe is positive self esteem is like the centerpiece of a healthy personality. And
Mm-hmm.
so, even though we've received all these messages, at some point, we have to bring the little girl or the young man and introduce it to the adult.
Mm-hmm.
And the adult, Anissa, the adult Catherine, the adult whoever's on this chat is constantly in conflict with the child part of us. Those two people are in there, and we have to learn how to teach those two how to coexist. And I'll say this. This is one of the like things that I think about all the time, and I try to really share this. When the adult talks, the child feels. We feel first.
Mm-hmm.
And what we feel then is communicated up through our brainstem into our brain. And then we have all of this information that's constantly with us. So if you're feeling that you're not pretty enough, if you're feeling that you're not beautiful enough, so right, Catherine, you said it very well. One of the things that whether you were literally being said, whether it was being said, you're not pretty enough, or you need to do this, or you do that, the message your body received is always on point. Got to do this. You can't be anything less than perfect. And at some point, perfect, what do you do when perfect is not good enough? Anissa talked about being in New York City. There's so many layers of what came with that. I come from a family that's extremely diverse and mixed, and I received messages that I was super smart, super intelligent, but I also, and I was talking to my husband about this earlier today, I recall the messages, oh, Brandy, you don't want to stay in that sun too long. Oh, Brandy, your hair grade is not your mom's hair grade, it's closer to your dad's hair grade. And so as a kid, all of those messages are playing through your head. And so you think, well, hell, this is too much to keep up with. I can't control my hair grade. I can't control my skin color. But the smart thing, right? Oh, she's smart. So perform, perform, perform.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get to a space where while you enjoy performing, you really aren't happy because there were a lot of emotionally unintelligent people around you. And this is the other thing. It's very hard for us as people to look at our parents objectively because it feels like we're betraying them by acknowledging their flaws. We love them, but there was a lot of flawed thinking, a lot of flawed things that were said, and it has been passed down generationally to everybody. And it's also been passed down through the media. And like you said, it's not just a Black race thing. So it goes back to what you said, Anissa. It's a combination of everything, but it goes back to start doing the work on you. Do the work on you. Do the deeper dive, because there's so many things that we don't like to connect to, right? We don't want to go there. And if we would just take a moment and dig down deep and start to like and celebrate and be compassionate to that little girl that lives in us, then the adult woman will say, this is how I want to show up in the world. This is who I am, not who I was told to be, not who I was molded to be. And you can still respect your culture.
I love the fact that you were talking about the little girl, right? Because we are talking about women today on this session, and a lot of women don't want to dig deep and talk to that little girl, right? Not so much talk about too, we don't want to come to that point where we have to address those issues that have bothered and plagued us in our adult life, and the reason why they're bothering us is because we didn't fix or repair the trauma that we went through as children. And it's a constant battle. And I figured that out a few years ago, and I think I was in my 30s, and I still struggle with, or I still think about it, not struggle so much with my inner Catherine, or my younger girl, the little girl Catherine, used to. But I know my experiences. I have a great family, which I'm blessed to have never experienced any trauma that was so severe that it was, life-changing. But my trauma came from this very topic, being pretty and fitting in, and my skin color, right?
Yeah.
My skin color was a huge issue for me growing up. And everybody in my family was light-skinned Black women. And I was the black sheep of the family. I was the darkest kid on the playground or in the backyard. So I used to get a lot of flack for being the brown-skinned girl, the dark girl. So I really grew into an adult because I didn't repair those issues that I had, those experiences. I would get the black dolls and for Christmas, and I would throw them across the room. My mom would, if it wasn't for her telling me I'm Black and beautiful, and my skin is a badge of honor, I don't know what kind of woman I would be today, because she really took care of that for me once she noticed how damaging little things people used to say was affecting me. And even my family members treated me differently because I was darker than they were. So, the whole Creole thing, and, poisson blanc, and not acknowledging that you're African just because you're light skinned. So I say all that to say, I had to deal with that. And I think I started dealing with that when I was in college. And then
college is a life changer. When you move away, when you go to college, especially if you go away, but college, that experience, it's like, it's when you start sifting through all the stuff.
And the HBCU experience really helped me become knowledgeable as who I am as an African woman, and why I, was beautiful because of the melanin that I had. So I had to come to terms with that because I didn't even like light-skinned women. Like when I was younger, I used to pick fights when, like, if you were too light and you were too cute or with the long wavy hair, oh, I'm coming for you. Like I was going to do something to try and tear down character or hurt you physically because of your skin, because how damaged I was.
Yeah.
So I knew I had to fix it, and I fixed it when I got to college and my HBCU and learning and understanding my triggers and my issues. So a lot of
For
women
you, it was.
fix it, you know.
I think that what you said, Brandy, I think is so important is first the acknowledgement. Like before you were like, well, let me fix it and unpack it or whatever. You can't get to that point until you acknowledge it, right? And so Catherine's skin issue was my weight issue, right? I was the chubby kid, I was the fat girl. And it's funny, Rudy, who is on here, who I've shared before, he and I have been best friends since the first grade. So he remembers the little fat, look, I have our school picture from PS 92 when I was the fat kid and all chubby, whatever. And back then, it's so different now. I love how body image and all these different things are dismantling now. But
Yes.
for me, I was the fat kid. I was tall and fat, right? So I was always at the end of the line because you had to line up in size order. I was always the fat kid. So there's only two routes for a fat girl to go. You're either going to be a bully or you're going to be a doormat because you want everybody to accept you. So guess which direction I took? I took the doormat. I just want everybody to like me. So I allowed myself to, be treated in a kind of way. But the skill I did develop though, like I was smart and I knew how to be everybody's friend, right? Like I knew how to be friends with boys and friends with girls and all this kind of stuff. And then I get to 8th grade, high school, all that weight drops off. And now I am this shapely young lady. But in my head, I'm still the fat girl, right? And so I always shied away from any kind of activity where how I look would be on display. And then when I got to middle and high school, I had the worst acne ever that's been, passed down. And so I had to take medicine. So I was just all jacked up and I just did not think that I was attractive, but I knew I was smart and I knew that I loved people. So that was the skill that I developed. But at some point, I had to reconcile, well, you're not the fat acne girl anymore. There are people looking at you that find you attractive. And then the other trauma of that was I attracted older men. And so as a kid, I was attacked by a crackhead. I was, like, very vulgar things were said to me as a teenager, in the 80s in Harlem, going to high school, that made me also want to not have my looks on display because I didn't want that. And so to your point, Catherine, when I got to college, I was like, who am I, right? Because it was, you're so beautiful, you're so this. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm smart and I can do all these other things. And it was anything that to detract away from how I looked. And it really took into my early 30s before I could say, you know what, girl, you are right. You are beautiful and you are pretty in your own way and you are shapely and that's okay. I had to go to therapy to unpack that trauma that I experienced, in and of myself, just to kind of unpack that because that's very traumatic. And also, I had to go, you don't have to be the doormat for people to like you. But that took well into my 30s to do that. And then I went to the extreme. I went from, oh, I'm a doormat to nobody's going to take it. And then I was like the other end of the spectrum, right? And so it was like my late 30s before I found like a balance between, no, you're not the doormat, but you don't have to be like this over aggressive, I'll hunt you down and kill you if you take advantage of me. Like you go to the extreme, the opposite. And I'm just at 50, I look in the mirror and go, I like her. She's kind of cute. I like her. I like my natural hair, even though I'm having a bad hair day to day. I didn't really start playing in makeup until my late 30s, early 40s, outside of lipstick. I'm like, these are the boobs you get. This is the tummy you get right now. and it's taken, but it's a constant journey. I think to your point, and always accepting the different layers of who you are to really
Yeah,
kind of get to that
sure.
self-love, point. And it still doesn't stop. Like you're constantly, looking to go, okay, I accept that. Like my hair's thinning at 50. I'm like, seriously? And I'm hot. Like right now, I'm like, where's the fan? But I have to go, bitch, you 50. This is what happens. Hair thins and you get hot at the most inopportune times. So own it, right? And don't dwell on it. So that's kind of where I
Mm-hmm.
am in my journey right now. Like,
Take
okay.
that time.
Mm-hmm.
You
Well,
all.
I want to express gratitude to both of you for your vulnerability, because to share those things and share them um, in this form, you just really help some people. And I'll also say this: two things came up for me as you were both sharing. You asked me a question, I kept answering it, and then I want to go back to it, because now that I'm really thinking about it, we often talk about trauma, but we so fail to talk about shame.
Mm-hmm.
And each experience of shame really creates this space for self-doubt and low self-esteem and all of those things. So like Anissa said, these shame messages, right? These doubt labels that she was taking on, she's carrying them to where it totally like reframed who she was. And by the time she recognized she was beautiful, she couldn't recognize she was beautiful because she had begun to say, everything that I've known about myself, this is how I define myself, right? So there's this distorted and cognitive dissonance between who you are and who you see. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
just not in sync. Now, how do we heal those things? I know we're giving a lot of education, so people often want to say, okay, so great, what do we do? Anisha, you just said it. You have to start affirming yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
affirmations aren't just, and people are like, oh God, here we go with the affirmations. First and foremost, what you don't know, speak it into you until you do believe it. Affirm you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I got some cellulite. This is what it is, right? That's it. You got to affirm that. Second thing is, what would it mean for us as women and men to, one, not only look inside ourselves, but look outside of ourselves and pour into another person
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
and see another person's beauty and celebrate another person's beauty for being who they are, heavy,
Mm-hmm.
skinny, small, short, whatever. Look at that other person, because that builds us up. And here's the power of vulnerability. This is what I really want to share. In your sharing of vulnerability, that is how you totally begin to heal shame. And that's why I said, if you can't get it from the outside, you get it from the inside and you give it to yourself. However, here's the other part: you can definitely give it to others and break that cycle. So, what would it have meant for you, either one of you, to have someone sit down and say, you know what? I too know what it's like to be the darkest in my family. Because I definitely wasn't the light bright. And I'll say, and it took me years, like my husband, like, you are light. I'm not light in my brain. Like, I'm, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? But this is, I grew up in my mother's biracial. She could pass for white. And here I am. My daughter, though, is on the flip. My daughter's as light as my mom. And she thinks that she's not beautiful. And I'm thinking because she's thinking there's something I have that she doesn't have. So the message
Mm-hmm.
we have to give these young ladies is, you're beautiful the way you are. However, I've been there. I know what it's like to have my uncle tell me this, and it sticks out for me. Talk about shame. You're finally beautiful, Brandy. I think I was 9. And I was like, I've always been pretty, Uncle Kelly. And my uncle was like, no, you haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a 9-year-old. So guess what
Mm-hmm.
I did? Did I learn to use my voice? Did I learn to express how I feel? I did what Anissa did. I went and grabbed my book. This is what I'm good at.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it is generational because my mother, so those of you who know me, know my aunt is Jackie, who is super light. My mother is dark skinned. My mother has the hue of her mom, and my aunt has the hue of their dad. You know, because again, because we don't learn the science of genetics, right? Like it wasn't until I took biology that, you know, you learn, well, you can get your dad's side eyes, but you're going to get your mama's side thighs, and then it's going to skip a generation. So you got great grandma's this. And, you know, we didn't know that growing up, right? We didn't know that until, you know, you went to a science class and you go, oh, I'm not a mutt. Like this is all the things that have played, you know, a role genetically in who I am. And my mother struggled um, her whole life with, you know, the dark skin. And I can remember when my aunt first started doing 227, and, you know, we would go to studios and she would show, this is my sister, da, da, and they would go, oh, you're Richard. Oh, because they look nothing alike. Now I look more like my aunt. I just do. I'm shaped like her. My mother is thin as outdoors. She's never been bigger than a size 4. Now I got my dad's shapeliness, that side, and I got my aunt. And so it's amazing. And I could see my mother and feel her pain when people would look at her and go, oh, you're Jack Hayes' sister, because they're bookends, right? And how also my aunt felt the need to defend that and go, yes, that's my sister. You know what I mean? And I felt, and it's those microaggressions. And it's funny, we talked about
Mm-hmm.
this on Daddy Richard's show Thursday about the microaggressions that, you know, Black men feel. Black women feel those things too, right? We kind of day to day we deal with these microaggressions about, you know, it's be assertive, but don't be a bitch. It's be beautiful, but not for anybody else but yourself. It's, you know, be humble, but be confident. It's a lot of fucking messages all at one time. It's like, you know, sometimes you have to turn all of those. It's be, you know, a freak in the bed, but a lady in the streets, which I don't have a problem with, but I digress. You know, it's all of those, be this way and be this way and be this way and be this way. And it's that way. I said on the show Thursday that there's a hierarchy. You know, we have the white man, you know, who's oppressive, then there's the white woman, and then there's the Black man, and then there's us, because we're dealing with the microaggressions of being just a woman, period. And then there's the microaggressions of being a Black woman.
Yeah.
And, you
Yeah.
know, I have just learned to go, there's just some shit I can't do. Like, do you ever get to a point where you just go, I'm too exhausted and I can't do it? And I'm just not.
Yeah.
And
And
take it or
that's where the
leave it.
work begins. That's
And
where the work begins, because either you're exhausted or you're burned out. And are you burned out
Hmm.
from being who people have called you to be? Or are you burned out
Hmm.
from being just being, right? When we get to a
Hmm.
place of just being is too much, that's when we know we have work to do. And
And we're
at
not,
some
yeah.
point, go ahead, Anissa.
You said earlier that we're not showing up in our relationships authentically. And I think that that's deep. And I would love for you, Catherine, you, Brandy, to expound on that, because I think while we're going through all of this in our brains, we're trying to be who our spouses want us to be, our kids, our friends, our jobs, trading off who we are authentically. And it's not fair to them, because then when we go through this Britney Spears moment, when we shave our head and go, I'm not, they're looking at us like, what the
who's
hell is
this?
going on? Because who they fell in love with or who they knew, right, is not who we really gave them. And some of that is just maturity and as we
Yeah.
evolve.
Yeah.
But they kind of look at us and go, well, what the hell is really happening? Because I thought you were good. I thought this was you. And then we hold them responsible when really it was us.
Mm. And we go into these things with the mindset, that you got to show up perfectly, and then you get tired, or to me it's always like really exhausting when I've heard a woman who I think is just gorgeous have to put on all this stuff. Now here's the thing, I'm all for that. Dress up, feel good, look good. But what is challenging for me is when I hear women who are so beautiful put all this stuff on, not for themselves, for the other person, and then they're upset when the guy, they wake up and that ain't who we went to bed with. That's not your authentic self, right? You look completely different. So where do those two come together? Where you're covering up yourself so much that you've totally transformed who you are. There's such a thing
Mm-hmm.
as enhancing your beauty, and then there's such a thing as I don't want to be who I am. I'm totally changing who I am. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where you have to do your work first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody want to get catfished. Let's just say that. You know, I think catfishing is an extreme sport, and now we are at this age where we can catfish and we can become something that we are not with the use of technology. I can create a dating profile with somebody else's picture, or only headshots of myself, and they don't know, or they think I'm skinny, but I could be a big girl and not even look like that picture because I have all the makeup and the weave or the wigs and the lashes and all these things on. And it's not cool. I totally agree. But I will say this, getting back to your earlier point, um, when we need to pose that question to ourselves, are you okay with your organic self, right? Are you okay with how you look in the morning? Forget a man, forget a husband, forget waking up
Right.
to somebody. When you wake up and look in the mirror with your hair sticking up on the top of your head, or when you're about to brush your teeth with the coal in your eyes, are you okay with that person?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of time, and I have a daughter who's 21, and
I
I
do
have
too.
taught her that, you know, from young, like, appreciate those kinky coils that you have in your head. Appreciate how you look, your features, your flaws. Because once you understand and appreciate and you can come to terms with who you really are, then you can start talking about enhancement, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a stage mom, Brandy. You don't know, but I could get you to look the part, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love all that stuff. I love glitz and glam. You know, I'm a hairdresser by trade. I think I'm a mompreneur by that's my second trade. But
Mm-hmm.
underneath all that, because my daughter did pageants, like, you know, I was totally ready for it. But do you love yourself before you put that weave, those 26 inches in your head, right? And that becomes a problem because I think a lot of times, especially as moms, here's my rule of thumb. Make sure your teen loves themselves and love their natural hair, love everything, all this, before you allow them to put that stuff on, to mask themselves. Because once you start wearing weave, it's just like they say, once you go black, you never go back. Once you wear weave and you like how you look with this long, beautiful Jolie tresses, by the way, that's our hair company. Once you start loving those things and how you look, sometimes you don't want to scale back. And it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a small addiction. And I can vouch for that too. But what I'm saying is you have to be able to love yourself and not live up to a standard on what you think people look like. Because those people don't look like that in their everyday lives. Those people on social media don't wake up looking like Kylie Jenner and Kim Kardashian. They look a certain way too without that
Mm-hmm.
makeup.
But
You know?
We
also
are.
just the surface, right? I think what you alluded to, and Rudy just alluded to this in his question. I think, we're talking about the outside, but we're also saying that you have to work from the inside out, right?
You have to work from
And
the inside
so
out.
before I could love my physical, I had to just love just me. I think that whatever the organic you is, because his question is, do you adjust? Do people have to adjust to you? I think when you're in relationships with people, there's always going to be compromise and meeting as it should be, right? But it shouldn't be at the trade-off of who you are organically. That doesn't mean, and that's a whole nother show, like in relationships, compromise, whatever. That's a whole nother topic. I
We could
think
go
it's
on
the
and on about
balance.
that.
Right. I think it's balance. Like for me, I've learned that the light bulb went off for me, particularly once I became a wife and a mother and a career woman. It's all about balance. It's about, I'm doing it for me, but yeah, I am doing it for my husband. I am doing it when I go. I do like for people to go, oh, I like that. And it's also doing it for me, like I like cigars. Like I think women smoking cigars is sexy as I don't know what. If you don't like it, that's not my problem. right? I
Yeah.
had to learn to go, if you don't like it, that's not my issue. If you don't like the fact that I have a tattoo, that's not my issue. And I had to get to the point where I had to go, you not liking it is not my issue. I did it because it spoke to something of me. You being Christian, that's what works for me. You know, driving this car, that's what works for me. This career choice, I had to get to the point where I go, I am doing this because this is what I like, this is what I love, or fulfills something about me. And if you don't like it, spouse, kid, friend,
Not my.
whatever, it's not mine to own. I'm giving it back to you. I had to learn how to give that back to the people, particularly the people that I love, because I want the people that I love to accept me. And what I did was I visited something on them that they didn't ask for. I just assumed that they wouldn't like it in some cases. In some cases, I knew that they wouldn't. It's sort of like if you're coming out because you're gay or lesbian, whatever, you have to get to the point where you go, you
I'm
know
here.
what, if you don't like me with makeup, right,
Mhm.
it's not mine to own. It's not,
Mm.
either you're going to accept it or not. And if you don't like it, it's cool. Like Liza can't stand cigars, but he's not stopping me from enjoying it. And that's the difference, right? You know, if you don't, hey, you're atheist, you don't, that's fine, but don't stop me. I think it's the shaming that Brandy talked about, because even like now we're all into natural hair. And so, but then I hear, you know, women who've been wearing their hair naturally now shaming people who still want to straighten. I'm like, see, here's where we go. It's not about shaming whether I'm permed, curly, kinky, fro, bald, and I think women with bald head is so sexy. Whether I have tresses or braids, it's about saying all of that is okay. You know, like, don't, you know, shame me because I still eat meat and you decide to go plant-based. It's
Right.
You know
okay.
I'm a meat eater, girl.
Oh my
Oh,
God, I have a steak waiting for me when we get off the show. That, like, I think for me, what I'm finding is that when people find themselves, it's sort of like when you find religion, or, you know, you find your skinny self now, then you take off. And it's like, well, don't shame other people for what works for them. And
yeah.
but what I have learned to do is not take responsibility and own what you
That
don't
part.
like.
Right.
That part. And I think Whitney Houston said it best. Can I be me? And here's the part though. We got to be careful. Being me should not be hurtful and disrespectful to other people.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
However, can I be me? And here's the part. And this is another show, but I do want to say this because it's a big deal. We are people in relationship with other people. And when we're not healthy and we get in relationship with other people, we tend to get in relationship with other people that are not healthy either. And then
Mm-hmm.
we turn
Mm-hmm.
around and want to know what is going on and why is it not working. But if we do our homework and we go back to ourselves, like Anissa said, you're trying to get other people to subscribe to something that you're not clear about. You haven't dealt with your own story. And you said it so clearly and so perfectly, Anissa. College is one of those places where the who am I starts to really come together. But who am I is a lifelong journey. And as we transition through different stages of our lives, sometimes it's very hard for us to transition the way we should, right? And if we didn't succeed at a certain stage, then sometimes we kind of get stuck there, right? For example, as parents, a lot of parents have a hard time with this. Your kid grows up, but you're still trying to manage their life like they're not grown. Your role
Mm-hmm.
changes from raising them
Yep.
to providing them wisdom and being their parent and loving them. But people want to, I've seen grown folks come to my office who are like being parented by their 40 something year, like they're 40 something years old, the parents parenting them, and they want to know why there's a problem in their marriage. But
Mm-hmm.
it goes back to some things that we learn growing up. So these phases of life, we have to learn this. And here's the other part. This is the most important part of our beauty. Learn what would be the benefit of learning to sit with really uncomfortable feelings. What would it mean to be okay with not being okay and on point all the time? There's a benefit in that. If we're never taking a moment to celebrate that it's okay to not be okay, we're totally denying our humanity.
Right.
So
Because
Daddy Richard
if you're
asked
so
a
busy
very good
not doing
question.
that, you're running from your hurt. I'm sorry, go ahead.
He's asking how, you know, with all of the healing that how do we strike a balance between being healthy and healing, right? And, is it a balance, or is it that your health comes when you heal? Like, what would you say, how would you answer that question? That's a great question, Daddy Rich. Thank you for asking that. Is it a balance between being healthy and healed, or does being healed lead to being healthy?
I think it depends on the person.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think sometimes it can happen in conjunction, but then I think sometimes on another scale, like I've seen women who have these beautiful stories, and men too, but I've been seeing a lot of women coming through my Instagram feed who were extremely overweight, right? And I am like, anybody knows me, I think everybody's beautiful. But I also think it's extremely beautiful when they want to change that for their own health reasons, right? And as they start journeying through this weight loss, and I see them go from here to there, there's still that self-esteem stuff that's in the middle of there. But when you see them take that and combine it with their health, then it becomes a whole process. For each person, it's different. Some people will work on their mental health and not their physical health. And then they say, okay, I'm starting to love me so much, I want to bring my physical health in this. And then they become a whole person. And this is, the name of my practice, Anissa, parts of me. I think all of the parts of us should be celebrated. If you have a person who's cutting and self-injuring, don't shame that. Celebrate that, because that part kept you safe. Now, how do we replace that unhealthy thing with a healthy thing? Right? So if we do less shaming and more celebrating and expressing gratitude and being more vulnerable as people, like Anissa, Anissa teases me all the time. She's calling you a diva, but she really goes in on me. Trust me, she goes in on me all the time. But she'll tell you I'm the most, like, I throw people off. They have no idea who I really am. And Anissa spent some time with me one day. She's like, you're nothing like I thought you were, right? But I'm who I am all the time. I really am. It's just whether or not I let you get in there. But this is the thing. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life, and I'm a therapist, and I believe every person should talk to somebody. Everybody should, because we're always working. As that, the biggest lesson I've learned about my own health, my own healing, my own growth, my own balance is putting boundaries in place with your family, your friends, because what you don't do is allow other people, including your adult parents, to teach you how to mute your own voice. When you're not using your voice, it's a very hard thing to get to healthy, whole, loved, wellness. You have to learn how to take that adult part of you and that child part of you and help them coexist so that they can coexist, and the adult can lead the way and say, I'm going to use my adult voice and say, you know what, I really appreciate that you think I should do my hair this way, but I really like the way it looks today.
Right?
Yeah,
That's powerful.
I totally agree with that. And that's some awesome advice. And I know I struggle. I'm a control freak too, but I struggle with, I'm going to just say controlling and managing my children, especially my oldest daughter, right? She's her
You
own.
all have graduates. I'm sorry. Brandy has college graduates, and Catherine has a recent college graduate. So congratulations, moms. Let me acknowledge the moms and the parents who have poured into both of you all. Brandy has 2 graduates, and Catherine has 1 graduate. So congratulations. It just dawned on me that you all have college graduates.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
I
baby.
know Brandy, well, since I know that now, Brandy, you know what I'm talking about, what I'm going through when it was a control issue for me to make sure that she got done what she needed to get done. And as we know when our kids are, if they're slackers in certain departments, and we always try to instill those good habits in them of, hey, did you do this? Did you wake up? Did you call your grandma? Did you do this? So and I do a lot for my oldest daughter, and I think it was more of a pacifying thing for myself. Not even I just wanted to make sure
Oh my
everybody,
God, that's powerful.
and it wasn't to help her. Really, it didn't help her because I was doing it for her. I was checking her credit card balances, right? I was making her minimum payments if she didn't. I was I was doing these things for her, but not teaching her at the same note that, hey, you need to do this yourself. And she was, I was a crutch. So and I had to teach her and myself when it came to certain points of failure, right? Because if she
Mm.
failed in something, then I had to be the person to help her repair. And
Mm.
and for
But what
John,
happened if you're not here?
yeah, we talk about this all the time. And my daughter called
Mhm.
very quickly. My daughter called me before she graduated, before we went down there. She was like, "Oh, I can't wait to get back home. I'm gonna play GTA. Yeah, I get to, relax. And then I need you to cook me some baked chicken." She was planning out the menu, and I was like, "Hold up, you are graduating, and now you are an adult, and you're coming back into my space as a woman." And you are no longer a college student that I will be taking care of. So we have to revamp this this relationship that we have.
Mhm.
I'm gonna always be your mother. I'm always support you. But we have to revamp because you have reached a milestone in your life and you have to be independent. And I think that's very important. And sometimes as mothers, we don't do that. Even with our sons, we don't do that. We don't say, hold up, like Brandy said earlier. That's not my role anymore. We need to come back to the table and start from scratch and try to decide how we're going to move forward with growth in place.
And
So,
I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
I love how you pointed that out because one of the things that I'm always struggling with is who am I outside of the roles that I have. So I'm a daughter, and now as my mother's older and a little bit more frail, I'm a caregiver. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. You know, I am, what my position is in the county. And sometimes I have found as part of my health and wellness, I have had to intentionally sometimes disengage. I don't want,
Mm-hmm.
and I struggle with that because I feel guilty because I'm like, there are days I don't want to be anybody's honey. I don't want to be anybody's mommy. I don't want to be anybody's Mrs. This. I just want to be Anissa and whatever that looks like that day, whether it's, at the winery with my girls or doing all of these shows. Like this for me, before I was a mom and a spouse, I did radio, I did forums around the city. This is who I was. And then when I became a mom and a wife, I had to dial back. And that's not to say there's some things you shouldn't dial back because, you can't just leave your infant everywhere. You can't just, so it's not that I don't understand that, but it is still not feeling guilty. And I know, Brandy, you could speak to this very well, is being intentional about, what? I just need a break from being whoever's whatever
yeah,
today. Like whatever, finding outlets for myself. Like Will Smith said, and I love Will Smith, when he said he and Jada had this conversation and she said to him, I'm
Mm.
not responsible for your happiness.
that's
There
That
right.
you
was a
go.
gem. I'm not responding. And now the only amendment I would add to that though is that the people that are closest to you can impact your happiness. So
They
there
sure
still
can.
has to be something to that. But when you were talking about failure, I think I'm the helicopter hoverer mom, and I have to learn how to. And both of you know my kid and her struggles. I've got to find a balance between letting her move in her space without abandonment, right? Or without being too much, which I know I can be, as Rudy would say, team too much. But I remember he posted this and said, failure is what leads to success. That if you don't fail, you don't succeed. And I'm paraphrasing. So if you follow Will Smith, like go back like 2 years ago. But it was something to that effect that you cannot be successful without failure. So we have to stop being afraid of failing. And I have to
Mm-hmm.
adopt that for myself. And then I have to allow my daughter to fail. Like,
Mm.
especially if I've given her the tools, like, okay, here's the tools. And it's very, as a parent, that's hard. As a mom, that's hard. But at the same time, I also know, I recognize that it was through my failures that I became a better person. Failure in relationships, failures at jobs, failures in friendships, failures in, taking the SAT or this MCAT or whatever it is that we embark on, that our best growth came out of our failures and our most painful moments. So I can't stifle that for her, because that's where her growth will come, because that's where my growth is still coming from, right? Like, it comes from those most vulnerable, painful failure moments is where the growth really begins.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times, Brandy, we say that as, the old cliche quote is, I don't want you to go through what I went through. Right.
Yes,
And a lot of
yes.
as uh, the more educated, and I always talk about, being a Black woman, but the more educated I became, the different circles I moved in, right? The more money I made, the different, the places that I went started to vary, right? So when we're living and we are deconstructing this evasive cycle of poverty and ignorance and um, poor parenting, I think when we get to a point where we can afford to go to
Yeah.
boutiques and buy baby clothes when we get pregnant, instead of like I had to do when I was 19, when I was pregnant with my oldest daughter, have to go to Walmart. You know what I mean? I used to walk by, the stores when I was 19 years old and I was pregnant. I used to look at, white people going into these nice little baby boutiques and buying $100 onesies and, and I would say, well, I wish I had enough money to go and buy that for my kids. So when I became pregnant with my youngest daughter now, who's 9 years old, I was able to go into a baby boutique and buy a $100 onesie. She even had a Gucci onesie set when she was, a toddler, and when she was a baby. But I think we get into this space when we have money, we can afford certain things, and we
Mm-hmm.
forget to teach our kids those basic things like how to pump gas, clean up without getting money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Attached to, certain things that they supposed to do. And I think we just coddle them with so much love
Absolutely.
and programs and tutors.
Mm-hmm.
We forget to teach them how to figure it out on their own, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Fail over and over and over again and dig your own self out of that hole, because that's what a life experience come from, right? You have to fail in order to learn. And I agree with, and I'm still in that quote that you said Rudy had posted, but you have to understand that we have to teach our kids or expose them to, hey, this can be you if you don't do,
Mm-hmm.
so you need
He
to.
just said the same thing. We want to give our kids the life we wish we had. And the trade-off is we still don't teach them some of the things based on our hardships, right? Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to give your kids more than what you had, but
Right.
it can't be at the trade-off of, well, you still need to teach work ethic. You
And
still
you,
need to teach economics. You still need to teach, just because, we may be affluent, we're going to eat crackers and soup, right? Like, you still got to go out and work. You're not getting a Mercedes just because we can afford it. You'll get a Mercedes when you can afford your own. He just said the same thing about his own kids. And you just said the same thing. And I know, Brandy, you and I have talked about this. Like, it's the balance. Again, I always circle back to balance, because it's the balance of, I want to provide for my kids what I didn't have, but what is the line between giving them what I didn't have or creating the life I wish I had,
that's right.
for them, at the trade-off of not, because this hardship is what teaches. So, like, we taught our kid, like, we live in the suburbs. My kid is not growing up in the Bronx like I did. But we taught how to ride the metro. 'Cause, huh?
And wouldn't know what to do in the Bronx. You know what I'm saying?
Wouldn't know a damn thing if I dropped her off at the Bronx. But what we did, so we had to be intentional about, we're going to teach you how to ride the metro. So we drop you off and you're going into DC to your father's job. You are, you know, we had to be more intentional about, you know, those kinds of things, because at the end of the day, I'm like, if mom and dad were not here, I still need you to be able to live
Right.
without us, right? That's what good parents do. Good parents teach you how to be, you know, successful, whatever that is, but to survive, like all of those things that come along with adulting.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that's super important is when you talk about, and if we go back to the beauty piece, is really reflecting back on our own journey. What did we get too much of? What did we not get enough of? And then when you have that, then you take that and apply it as best as you can to your parenting. But in your parenting, like for example, I have often, you know this, Anissa, have had lots of battles with my kids about you need to earn. And people will say, well, your parents this, that, and the other. But here's the thing. Like you said, your kids couldn't survive. My kids couldn't walk a day in my life. They couldn't. And here's the other thing is, if something happens to me, there's not one single person on earth that I know can take care of my kids. So I need to equip my kids for the long haul. If I'm not here, I don't want my kids in a situation where they don't have any street smarts, which I do, they don't. You know, when they went off to college, now what I did do is teach them how to earn. But one of the things my daughter said to me is, you did everything for me. And I thought about it and I was like, you're right. You know why? Because it's something that everybody didn't do for me. Nobody did all this stuff for me. But it's exactly what both of you said. I was spending so much time teaching my kids, you know, love yourself, like yourself, stay in your own lane. It's okay to be an individual. What I didn't prepare, especially my daughter, for is everybody doesn't celebrate that you're an individual, and that's okay. And it's okay to recognize that sometimes people will say things that are going to hurt your feelings, especially when you think of us as Christians. As Christians, that's a whole nother layer, right? Because as Christians, we are taught so many things, and we're so busy worrying about being sinful, especially the way I grew up in Pentecostal church. You don't really get an opportunity to even worry about the beauty part, because you better not have on those slingbacks, and that skirt better be to the ankle. And then you grow up and then you have a hard time understanding that it's okay to be beautiful to your husband, right? There's that piece too. And then you're trying to navigate your daughters, right? And you're making them way too Pentecostal, right? And instead of understanding that, okay, it's okay for them to be cute, like it's a whole thing.
A whole thing.
So what did
I didn't wear my first pair of I didn't wear my first pair of fishnet stockings and red lipstick until I was in my 30s, because my grandmother and my aunt, it was only harlots wear fishnet stockings, and only harlots and whores wear red lipstick. I did not buy my first pair of fishnet stockings until I was like, and when I say 30s, I'm talking like 34, 35. I did not buy my first pair, my first stick of red lipstick until I was in like my mid 30s, because in my brain, that's what street workers and harlots, you know, to your point about the religious point. And so like with my daughter, like some people go, you let her wear that? Yep, I do. You know why? Because she's young and she's cute, and I want her to express herself. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have boundaries.
Boundaries.
That just means that I want her to be able to be less oppressed than I was, right? And I want her to, because I grew up thinking that sexuality and being sexy was sinful, to your point, and that as a woman I couldn't, and it wasn't, again, for my late.
Up there like this.
Right. And it's so funny because it wasn't in my mid-30s. I was like, I have a little Kim side. Like, I have a little Kim side, and I feel stifled because society says you're not supposed to be. And I'm like, but I am. I am that chick. I am. But I felt ashamed. Like, you know, how can I be a Christian, and how can I be a lady, and how can I be all of this? And, you know, I got a freaky side and I got a wild side and like whatever. And so with my kid, I'm like, you know what? Own it. Because first of all, look at all your genes. You may not be able to wear these outfits by the time you and your 30. So pumpkin, go ahead and rock out right now, because I don't know what's going to happen later. It's a roll of the dice with the genes, right? But it is also, I don't ever want her I don't ever want her to feel oppressed about who she is in terms of her sexuality, in terms of her intelligence, or whatever. I want her to own all the sum of her parts, because it took her mom into her 40s, late for to and even 50 to really go, I have to accept the sum of all of my parts, right? And I am perfectly
Say
imperfect.
my practice name.
I am perfectly imperfect. I am the sum of all of my parts, and all my parts ain't cute, and all my parts don't smell good, and all my parts don't look good, and sometimes some of my parts grow too much hair, and sometimes my parts have a sass mouth. But I'm also intelligent and beautiful and funny. Like, I have to accept all of those things because
I
they
love
all
it.
add up to who I am.
And that's the thing. Oh, Anissa, I love that. I have had so many discussions about this and a lot of aha moments. And I remember being, like I said, like maybe 9. And there was this time when, you know, I don't know why I was always in Bible study with the adults, but that's where I found myself at. And I remember challenging my pastor at the time. And as I've gotten older, I've challenged a lot in the church. Now, no, I'm not saying I'm not a Christian. I'm not this. But what I
Sure.
have a challenge with big time is, and this is where marriages have problems. Men are taught that it's almost like the wife has this duty. Why aren't we taught that we are sexual beings and we should enjoy our sex with our wife? I don't want that to be work, right? So I'll be the first to say it. As a woman, it took me, when I got with my husband, I was like, it is on and cracking. We've been waiting to do this thing. Let's do it. But so often I spend so much time with young women who the church doesn't explain to them it's okay to be sexual. Why are we not doing? Because then adult women, whoever they are, they live in shame because of something that they're curious about. And then they get in a relationship with their husband and they hold back and feel bad for it. I've had very high, like prominent people in the church, of course, I'm never going to say who these people are, who were like dabbling into pornography and then shamed of it. And the reason they were dabbling in is because that's something that the church doesn't like to talk about. If you would
Absolutely.
talk about it and say, the marriage bed is not defiled, talk about this. Talk
Absolutely.
about it. I remember
Absolutely.
mine, and I love my pastor. Love him. I remember him saying to me and Harry when we got married, like he almost said, you know, don't hold out on that part to me. That's going to be witchcraft if you ever withhold. And I was like, well, what about him? What if he withhold? And he's like, well, you guys read that section, and flipped over it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that left the whole chapter of our marriage counseling. And I'm not knocking him. I love my pastor to death. But that's what I'm saying. So when we talk about beauty, isn't sexuality a part of our beauty?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
sexuality doesn't have to be dirty. Go ahead.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
another show. Okay,
I
we're gonna
agree.
have to come back and we're gonna have to do a sexuality show. Our
Yeah,
You know
sexy
I
I
would
selves.
love
agree.
one.
That's
But
a show.
hold up. I have to disagree too. With something that was said earlier. It's just my like I said, my southern thing. Oh, I was trying to find a charger for my phone. But when we start talking about giving children freedom, we have to make sure that the freedom is not um
They
structured.
need boundaries. They need structure. I
Yeah,
agree
they
with
need
that.
Absolutely.
structure.
Absolutely.
You know, you
Absolutely.
need structure, you need boundaries.
We need that.
And
Absolutely.
I understand that, raising girls, you gotta, give them their freedom, but you don't give them too much freedom. When they're in your house, there's a certain control, there's a certain discipline that needs to be fulfilled, and it's a certain thing that I'm teaching
Absolutely.
you. I'm teaching you that you're a woman, and yes, you're a
Agreed.
human being, and yes, you're going to have feelings
Absolutely.
of sexuality and all these things. But I am training you to do and look and be a certain woman when you are outside of my house. So here's what we're not going to do while you're in my house, right? You're not going to wear certain clothes because I'm teaching you how to be a young lady. I'm teaching you how to look. Like my 9-year-old was like on her Christmas list, she put a crop top on her Christmas list, right? No, right? So we have to understand that it's not appropriate. Certain things I didn't let my oldest daughter do until she left and went sit in her dorm room and she paid for it herself. Like, I'm not paying for hair and weave. I'm not paying for nails to get done. I'm not paying for those things. If you want to do it, then you find a way to do, to get it done. And one of my girlfriends, she didn't let her daughter have a weave at all until she became 18 and she was assured of herself, who she was as a person, and then she left. I think that we can give them the freedoms and we need to teach them. Education is so important. Teach them about those feelings they get when they're with their boyfriend, so they know that
Or
they need to
girlfriend.
be protected, or girlfriend, and I have a
Or
total.
boyfriend or whatever, if you're raising sons or whatever, because we are inclusive on the
My
show.
I'm not
son,
I
inclusive,
definitely.
am.
I
but
taught my son a
other
lot
people
about
can be
girlfriends.
inclusive. But what I'm saying is,
Love and respect.
I think it's to each his own, and that's a whole nother show too. We just have to be very careful on the amount of the leash that we let go when we are raising
I agree.
girls, right? Because even if we were hurt as a young adult, and you talked about Freeman Jones, how you were shamed for your body images, and since your daughter doesn't have those issues, you're going to let her do, I'm just speaking hypothetically, you're going to let her do and wear what she want to wear. But if it's not supervised, and if you're not guiding her and saying, hey, this is cute, you do have the body for this dress from Fashion Nova,
Absolutely.
but it is not
No, we got
appropriate for
room.
you because you are 16
Absolutely.
years old. And it is not appropriate for you to wear
Absolutely.
lashes at 14. Yes, they make a woman's face and maybe make her features look even more enhanced. But you can't wear this because you are underage. So I think that we have to make sure when we give them the education, the freedom, and let off the leash, we also need to make sure that we are structuring and putting these boundaries in place so they know what they can look forward to in the future, because they have all their lives to wear lipstick, they have all their
And
lives
that's,
to wear makeup.
I agree
I
with
didn't let
that.
my daughter wear makeup when she was
I
in.
agree with that. I agree with that. But I think that's also relative. So, like, I don't have a problem with, you know, lipstick at 14, but you may. I think it goes back to what we said about how you wear your hair. I think that first of all, you have to know your children, male, female, whoever you're raising sons, daughters. Um, and I totally agree. There always has to be boundaries. So whatever the freedoms are, they're freedoms with boundaries. They're freedoms with, no, we have to vet that. They're freedoms with, you know, how that is. But I think it's also relative, right? Because we talked about parenting earlier and the things that are poured into us or whatever. I think what may work for you and your kid, Brandy, you and your kid, Cal, may not work for me or vice versa. I think that's why the village is so important, right? I
Yes.
think that's why also putting people, because the two of you are part of my daughter's village, and I would like to think that I'm part of your children's village, that because I don't always get it right, and you don't always get it right either, right? Like even with the boundaries and things that we set, that set, we don't always get it right. And I think that having people, I think as women, creating this village where we don't all have the same opinion and we don't have all the same kind of background and different things like that, I think is what helps our children, our ladies in particular, since this is sis talk, really help to grow in particular because
And be
it's
open.
all of these different things. Absolutely.
Yeah, we
Absolutely.
have to be
Y'all
open
keep
to
talking.
each
I'm gonna have
other.
to, my 50-year-old bladder is calling. Y'all keep going.
Yeah, and be open. So
No,
those are the things,
no, that's
I know.
absolutely right, and I agree with you. And I was, and like it is relative. I will say for my kids when they were growing up, I didn't want my kids to grow up too fast and be parentified, right? I didn't want that. So my daughter, I remember she didn't wear, she still talks about this. I was like at the 8th grade, when it was time for the 8th grade dance, you not dressing grown. This is what you gonna wear, right? We can get in here. And I remember this whole battle. Well, if you can't do it, we not gonna make it to that dance. So we came to a compromise, and everybody complimented her. And I said to my daughter, this is like the shortest period of your life. And you have all of your life to grow up. But right now, I want you to enjoy each phase, because you can never say you were robbed of it, right?
That's right.
But to each parent is his own. For me, I definitely wanted to spend a lot of time with let's work on loving your inside first and not showing people your outside. Because if they see your outside, don't advertise what's not for sale. That was my thing, right? And I can also say my mom was all about natural beauty. She never wore makeup, right? Now, we got to a compromise, because I remember her saying, when you turn 16, that's when I'll let you wear makeup. Well, by the time I turned 16, I didn't want no parts of makeup. I only like lipstick. It's the only thing I really like now. And it was one of those things that I have learned and appreciated it. And my husband appreciates it. I look like I do when I go to bed. I look exactly like I do when I get up. If we go to a function, I might do a little something extra. But I also am one of those people, I like my free time. I ain't gonna be in the mirror for no 45 minutes, hour putting on no face. I just don't have that kind of time.
Right. So yeah, it's important. I mean, to each his own. If you like it, I love it. And I think the great thing about sisterhood and the great thing about having friends and learning is because we have friends with kids in different milestones, different eras, different ages. So a lot of times, we should be open to listening to friends who have went through a certain era in parenting already, right? Sure. I'm not really going to take too much advice from one of my girlfriends that don't have experience with a college graduate, right? Or a kid who don't have kids, and I'm not going to get advice from her about my 9-year-old, right? So I'm not saying that what advice she have or to offer is not valid. Well, all I'm saying is that if I need parenting advice about my 22-year-old, or I'm going to go to Brandy, because Brandy has been in that era, right? Because Brandy has kids that's older than mine, that has graduated, that are similar. So I think we need to make sure that we are open to listening to each other and not thinking that I'm trying to tear you down, or I'm bashing your kid, or I'm bashing your parenting just by critiquing or bringing up something that I might feel may be damaging for the kid. So we always want to make sure that we are kid-centered instead of saying student-centered. Freeman Jones, did you catch my teacher?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
But we want to be kid-centered, right? We want to make sure that whatever parenting comments, suggestions, advice that we're giving it to each other as sisters, and we're giving it coming from a loving place where that the kid is protected. And that's very important, because I know Black women, we have to do a lot of stuff on our own sometimes. Some of us are single parents, some of us are married, some of us are in that in-between stage, but a lot of us we feel like we have to do everything for ourselves, and we don't need that advice. And if you tell me something, then you're attacking me, right? So I think that's very important. And I know we're coming to almost 2 hours, ladies, so we're gonna try and wrap this up. It's a beautiful conversation, and
Thank
I
you
just
to the
want to go.
people who joined us. Thank you for, I want to shout out the people who've joined us and who've been here the whole time. I want to shout out my girlfriend, Kim, who lives here in my neighborhood. She's part of my book club. And earlier when we first started, she said, I'm tired of the pressure. Like, you know what? Sometimes you just have to throw your hands up and go, F it. I'm no longer doing this.
And
right? Huh?
And don't forget, hi, Maya's daddy.
Hey, the real Johnson.
Hey, Hey, I think, you know, because I would like, as we're wrapping up, for Brandy to kind of share some healthy strategies for us to really find um, our best selves, or some strategies as we're on this journey, as it's because it's a continuance. You know, some of the things we should do, some of the things that maybe we should incorporate in our day to day. But I love the fact that she was like, because I think it does start with going, I'm not gonna keep doing this. Like, this is just
Yeah.
ugh. Like that exhale. You know, like, this is some bullshit, and I don't. This is just too much. But what are some things that would be healthy ways for us to navigate the journey of finding our best selves that have nothing to do with our roles of who we are to other people?
I think the very first thing that any person should do is sit back and say it's okay to begin the journey of getting some help. That doesn't mean I'm
Mm-hmm.
fractured or not fractured. Let me take my defensive wall down that says that it's inappropriate to get help, especially in the Black community. Black and brown communities, getting help gets a really bad rap. But I will tell you this, not just because this is what I do, it's a personal and a professional journey for me. Aside from all things, every one of us are living, breathing human beings. We wake up, we get anxiety, we get stress. If nothing else, this pandemic, this global pandemic, should affirm for every person on here that every person should be talking to someone. And just in case you're not aware of it, I'm going to be very clear with you. If you're one of those people who said, I've never experienced a pandemic or a trauma, yes, you have. You absolutely have at some point in your life. And if you can't come up with it, I'm telling you, you're experiencing one right now. Living through a global pandemic is a trauma. And the reason you don't know it's a trauma is because we're not on the other side of safe. When you get to the other side of safe, that's when you'll know you've been in a pandemic and it's been a traumatic experience. But for now, the best thing you can do is talk to someone, get busy. The second thing is, the very first thing that we were talking about is affirm yourself, celebrate yourself, acknowledge those points of you that have a lot of shame, explore your doubt labels. When I feel this, why do I have this? And the reason I go back to talk to yourself is because, or talk to someone, because a lot of times we spend so much time in our own heads that we're not able to open ourselves up and be vulnerable and allow someone else to be vulnerable. Again, the one way to truly heal shame is vulnerability. Is vulnerability. And sometimes we have to give that to ourselves.
That's right.
Sometimes we have to give that to ourselves. And I'll say this, there's one other thing that's super powerful, Freeman Jones. And you know I'm for this, and so are you. The power of your pen. Writing is one of the most powerful tools and resources you have. And whoever said that, you're absolutely right. Adverse childhood experiences are real.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we can be in denial with ourselves. We really can. We really can. But writing is a powerful tool. Sit down and do what I call write and release. At the end of the night, transform your night and say, you know what? Whatever's in your mind and your brain, just write it. Don't read it, write it. And here's the other thing. Give yourself permission not to be perfect in your writing. Don't worry about the punctuation. Don't worry about any of that. Write and release.
Freeman Jones.
Freeman Jones, we've talked about this. Transform your day. Transform your night. Start with something as simple as a mindfulness experience. I do so much mindfulness. It's unreal. But you don't need a therapist. Download an app. They're free. Do it.
That's right.
Transform your day. Do you like being in pain? Being in pain is a tough place, but I'll tell you this, vulnerability, as tough as it is the actual core of creativity and innovation. Be
I just
vulnerable
posted
and
in the
imagine
chat,
what you open up.
give yourself permission not to be perfect. Even though you were talking about writing in that context, I think in general, we have to give ourselves permission to not be perfect, right? I
Right.
think if whoever's still hanging in there with us, if you have no other takeaways, that should be one of your takeaways. Give yourself permission not to be perfect, and that you are the sum of all of your parts, and that all of your parts contribute to your perfectly imperfect self. And we have got to constantly, like, I'm so grateful to you, Catherine, and both of you know I like to talk, and this is what I like to do, because I think having platforms like this, like, we all have powers, and we can use our powers for good, we can use our powers for evil, right? And what I love about the women in my life that I have chosen to be part of my village, like the two of you, is that we use our powers for good, right? And this is part of using our powers for good. Having an open platform to just really talk about fun things and funny things, but also the tough things, the things that we cry, silently about, the things that we pray for, the things, or whatever your thing is. Like, my mission, I had to recognize that my purpose, and it took me a lot of years. It took me the last maybe 10 years to realize that this is my purpose. Teaching is my purpose. It's
That's
not just my career choice. I chose the career before I
Mm-hmm.
realized it was my purpose.
Mm.
And my purpose is to be used to educate in whatever way and whatever platform God has allowed me to be part of. And so it's sis talk, whether it's doing too much, whatever it is, I am grateful for the two of you and the women that are in my life who have joined us and that I'm on here with, that this is our purpose. This is to uplift and to educate each other and to provide platforms where people can feel safe to talk about some tough shit. Like, life is an EKG machine. It really is. It's up and down, and sometimes you're in between. And so I am grateful to the two of you for allowing me the opportunity to join you in fulfilling what my calling has been and what I believe your callings have been, in your respective ways as well. So thank you for that.
and
I'm
thank
laughing at you, Anissa, and I can't help it because Anissa, she gets on my case all the time. She's like, I need you to do this. And I'm like, well, not the month of July.
Because it's the month of Harry. So anybody who wants to book Brandy, you do not book in July. It is her husband's birthday. I think it's like the 26th or something, but they celebrate the whole month.
I
It is
love
the month of Harry.
I love
It
it.
is the month of Harry.
The
So you
month of
cannot book her.
I love
As
it.
a matter of fact, put in the chat, Brandy, how people can follow you.
Yes. Drop
Um,
your information, your IG handle, your practice. If you want to put the practice phone number, child, put everything down there so people can access you. Um, and
Well,
I love Brandy, by the way. I Googled you because
I knew you would.
I Google
I knew you
everybody.
would.
FJ has send me a person's name. What you think about this person? Well, this person is my friend. I'm Googling them before I give her an answer. But when I Googled you, I love on your website you had, I think it was the title entitled Therapy for Black Girls.
mhm.
And I think, did I say it right?
You did. It's part of me therapy, and I want to say thank you to both of you, especially Anissa. Not especially Anissa, but I'm saying thank you to Anissa because she, by profession I'm outgoing, but she knows I'm an introvert, and I don't like an audience. I don't. I like to heal. I like to be a part of that. This is who I am too, and Anissa knows this. I live and breathe this. I can look like the smallest person, but I can be the loudest person when I'm advocating for other people. And one of the things I go most hard for is people loving themselves. Like, I really, really go for that. And so I want to celebrate that because it's one of the things that I think that Anissa does really well is that she does connect other people. And just like tonight, I don't know how many people were on here, but it's the people that were meant to be here. And
Hmm.
that's all I know is we're all called to purpose, and I am very clear about my purpose. Like, I started off, and Anissa will tell you this, I have like this unique personality. I'm very much a business person. I build businesses. I know how to do that. but I like to do this stuff, right? I like the therapy stuff. People always want me to do presentations and talk, and I get scared to death. Anissa will tell you that. I'm like, I don't want to do this. What am I doing? And then I'll go do it. So it's one of those things, you know,
And
we
kill
are
it.
all beautiful people, and we're all a work in progress. And here's the thing. You see someone, build them up, celebrate them. That's the biggest thing. See the beauty in another person. Stop competing with other people and learn to celebrate other people, and you will naturally be blessed. Naturally, without any expectation back. I met you tonight, Catherine, and I love you already. Like, that's just who I
It's
am.
what I do. I bring people together. That's
And
what
all
I
these people on
do.
here, these are the right people on this
She's the
forum.
Olivia Pope.
Am I Olivia Pope? Wow. Oh, Wody Rock is on here. Hey, Wody Rock.
Yeah,
Look
yeah.
at these amazing
Thank
people
you.
on
I
here.
just want to thank everybody that's been on here, and
Shout
Kimmy.
out to the men who joined in. I have to shout out. First of all, I love Black men. They know that. I said it on Thursday when we celebrated them. Shout out gentlemen who tune in to Sis Talk with us, to learn about us, to participate with us, to ask us questions. Thank y'all so much. Y'all are so great. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you. Thank you.
thank you
Thank you.
so much. We really appreciate you guys. And getting back to our closing, we just want to make sure that this Sis Talk session reached women and men. Because men, you have to take care of your women too. So it's always good to know what your woman is thinking and what she's going through. So
And I can do a whole men's session. I do a lot of men's Let's talk about it.
yeah, we want to make sure that we, you all know how thankful we are. And I am so thankful that Freeman Jones has bought into my vision. And I learned something from Steve Harvey, even though a lot of people don't like the things that he said. But I did learn something from Steve Harvey a long time ago. And he once said, stop trying to be something that you are not, right? Stop trying to go sing in the church when you can't sing, right? And stop trying to do things that are not natural for you to supersede in, right? So I had to learn that sometimes your passion and your purpose are two different things, right? So I just want to make sure that ladies, we understand, like, stepping into your best self requires work. It requires evaluation. It requires you to synthesize and bring all those things together once you have done the work to heal and emerge as a healed woman, and then be able to properly parent other human beings and properly be with men and properly be a wife or properly be a sister or a friend.
And it's okay to be properly single, and that's another thing. One of the things, I think that's a great topic we should talk about.
Yes.
At some point in the future.
Oh, because you know you're coming back, right? You already know.
I mean,
You
I really want
already
to do
know
that
that you're coming
because I
back.
get a lot of that, how challenging it is and difficult it is and all this stuff. And I always say to women, I hear that. Where'd that come from? Why do you feel like you're not whole without it? But the first thing is, what have you accomplished without him? Let's start there. Let's talk about you first. Well, Brandy, what about my mate? Your mate's irrelevant. And here's the thing. I don't think it's as dire straits as it seems to be. But do you love you enough to even be ready for him or her or whoever you're waiting on? Are you
That's
ready?
the word. Okay, that's the show right there. That's the word.
I said, you can get a mate tomorrow, right? You can marry somebody tomorrow. Tell me you can't marry somebody tomorrow. You can. But is he the one you meant to marry?
No. Right.
Or are you ready? Are you your best self? Are you your best self for that person? Yes, absolutely.
Right. So it takes work. But thank you all, ladies, so much. I appreciate you, AK Free. I appreciate you stepping into your light. And I appreciate and I appreciate you so much. And I appreciate you, Miss Wimbish. See, I said it wrong.
You gotta practice. It's okay.
You, Brandy, and for everybody on the call still, I appreciate you all too. I love the element of having a psychotherapist on here who can give us some well-versed and well-researched knowledge about the things that we're talking about. So thank you.
We didn't even do that much therapy. We just did regular old stuff that people know. And that's
See, there you go, underestimating yourself again. This is what I love about her. She is a therapist extraordinaire, but she's so down to earth and just so like, but I'm just me. You remind me of my pastor that says, when I'm preaching to you, I'm preaching to myself too. When
Yep.
she's giving it out, she's giving it to herself too, which is what makes me love you so much, and what I think makes your practice so authentic, because you don't have this hierarchy like I got it all together. You're like, I have the education and the skills and the certification, but I'm on this journey just like you are. And I think that that's very helpful, because people need to know that we're not alone, right? That it's a security, and know that I'm not the only one going through this shit. I'm not the only one who's evolving and learning and struggling. And so that's what makes you and your practice so important. So I think we did it again, ladies. I think Sis Talk again was a success. I pray that somebody was blessed and had some great takeaways from tuning in with us. I know I did, and I appreciate this safe space.
This is
And thank you,
wonderful.
Rudy, if he's still on here, because
When's the next one?
he's so we
2
do it
weeks.
bi-weekly. So we'll have a next one, and the next one should be our Hall Pass show. I
Right.
believe that one is scheduled. So it's
I'll fill you in on Brandy offline on that one.
should a guy or a woman in a relationship receive a Hall Pass?
Oh, I love those kind of talks.
So yeah, so we were talking about that, and we're gonna
Okay.
pick
We
up
need to
on
do a
that
sex
conversation.
talk. That's a big
So
one.
I want to have a rotation of folks, like, because I want to get the perspective of various people on that. So we're gonna just unpack the Hall Pass. We were laughing about. I said I think that every 5 years I should be able to take something else on the shelf. Hey.
Okay.
So
Yes,
we're
and definitely a sex talk.
on
Definitely
our
a sis talk around sex and sexuality. I agree.
Around sexuality
and
especially
everybody don't
women's
forget
sexuality.
on the 28th, I have a teacher talk show, which will be surrounded around how dating and why dating an educator is different. All right.
Yeah.
And I have a
Yeah.
wonderful woman who is a principal, administrator, but she has also been in the classroom for many years, and she is newly single. So we are going to talk about that, like emerging yourself onto the dating scene, and why dating an educator is different from dating any other type of woman. So we're going to talk about that, and we're also going to talk about other things. Next week will be the Hall Pass show. So Rudy, you
In
might
2 weeks. In 2 weeks. In 2 weeks.
in 2
Not
weeks,
next week. In 2 weeks.
the week after next.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
thank you so much, ladies. Love, love, love you guys. And we will pick up next time.
Sounds like.
Absolutely. Love y'all.
Thank you, Brandy.
Good night. Anissa's
Good
gonna
night.
tell me all the stuff.
Yep. I'll fill you in.
All right, bye.